Under the priest's booming chant, the 14-year-old, who just reclaimed memories from a past life, kneels through the goddess's rite that crowns teens with power, breath hitching as the revelation looms, only to be handed an embarrassingly tame ability. He could command animals, horses and pigeons obeyed his will, but his peers sneered it useless. His father, born into the renowned family of swordsmen, recoiled in disbelief and demanded how a son could be saddled with a non-combat gift, then exploded in rage, calling him pathetic and unworthy of the Albion name, while his brothers laughed that his failure clears the path for the heir. The boy bowed his head as memories of a past life ignited. An elder murmured that every power has its reason, and the boy ripped off his silence to declare himself Rest Albion, the character he'd played in a game in his past life. Rest's blood runs cold. He's been reborn as the villain, not the protagonist. Memories slam into him. In the game's story, a top commander of the Demon King's army kills Rest midway, and every route he knows ends at his death, so he understands the game's paths like a map, and that they all funnel into the strange power he now holds. Forcing his breath steady, he remembers tame was meant for livestock, but his version is anything but ordinary. It's capable of bending monsters to his will, a gift the original Rest twisted into cruelty after relentless persecution. So now Rest sees both the promise and the poison of the ability, and he concludes that, given the monstrous scale of his power, every step drags the Demon King's army closer. Evading death's omens won't change it. His power will be ripped away, and death will claim him. So with blazing resolve, he begins scheming to shatter that dark fate. Determined to rewrite his fate, Rest vows to weaponize his knowledge of the game and become an unbeatable force that can crush any opponent. And with a confident glare, he charts a path to rewrite his own story. At a family meal, he realizes there's only 1 year left before the story's events begin, and desperate to survive, he sees the massive list of tasks he must finish to escape death. During a report on the Albion family's routine, his brothers Edward and Sidward buzz with enthusiasm about training, and their father, Gad Albion, praises them, while Rest, the fourth son, sits silent as the first wife, Jera, sneers and calls him useless. He stays calm and keeps eating. Brothers mock him, suggesting he become an animal caretaker or coachman. Gad treats him with contempt and refuses to listen, so Rest thanks them for the meal, keeps his composure, and leaves as the provocations continue. 1 week after regaining his memories, he begins testing the world's rules alone, confirming he can't see status values like in the game, but discovering the evolution system works. Killing monsters truly strengthens his abilities. He scours every scrap of info to gauge his survival odds, then discovers his tame ability only summons monsters he's personally defeated. To tackle stronger foes, he must pump up his stats and skills, so he binds himself to midnight training every night at day's end, a game system he remembers that lets him boost different attributes daily. Back in the real world, he discovers there are no time restrictions or daily limits, and excitement explodes as he realizes he can evolve fast without grinding monsters. So Rest tests magical reinforcement, and to his shock, refines mana with effortless precision thanks to his gaming instincts, notices his body is far stronger than in his past life, and remembers how the game labeled his character lazy, while now he understands the real Rest must have trained like hell despite the despair after getting the tame ability. On a walk, Edward and Sidward rush up to needle him about that tame power, mocking that he couldn't even tame a dog, then bolt off to sword training. But Rest refuses to be derailed and stays locked on his goals as Sidward keeps taunting that he should specialize in taming pigs, which Rest, used to the twins' nonsense, ignores, until a commotion in the garden snaps everyone's attention. The young warrior storms in with razor focus and declares that today they'll push themselves to the limit to survive, her stance all steel and confidence making the training's brutality obvious, and she casually reveals she hunted a land dragon on the way, leaving Edward and Sidward stunned while Rest, even more stunned, realizes this woman is his brother's master and her power is undeniable. He notes she doesn't appear in the game, and that this detail came from the original Rest's memories, and even though rank S adventurers are common in the game, seeing her in person is breathtaking, filling him with regret that he won't be the one to learn from someone so formidable. And 2 hours later at the Albion family training field, the master launches into a grueling training. She erupts into action with lightning precision, pinning Edward and Sidward under a storm of blows until they scramble to keep up, and when they falter, she coldly demands what kind of performance that was before effortlessly beating them both at once. Rest watches, stunned, as she orders the brothers to get up and keep going, the whole scene to him like an adult dealing with helpless children because the strength gap is that obvious. Exhausted and at their limit, Edward and Sidward collapse and admit they can't go on. The master ends the training satisfied, and Rest, relieved it's over. Thinks he could toughen his brothers with drills, but wonders if they really needed to be pushed so hard. Then realizes learning real combat alone is impossible when he notices the master visits the Albion family once a month to train them, and they're wasting the chance. So he decides this opportunity is too valuable to miss and steps forward. Before he can speak, she fixes him with a direct look and asks if he needs something, which startles him and tightens his chest. He formally introduces himself as the fourth son of Albion and apologizes for being late. She already recognizes him as the boy who received the tame ability, and nervous, he fumbles a request, calling her Elna and begging her to teach him the sword because he wants to get stronger, while she warns that his tame ability isn't for combat, and without swordsman skills, he won't survive her training. Yet he insists and proves his desire is genuine, so she studies him silently, thinks, and finally agrees to start training. She wastes no time, lunges with blinding speed, and lands an attack Rest barely reacts to. The gap between them glaring as she presses with precision and demands he prove he deserves to be trained, and under that pressure Rest steels himself for the trial that will shape his future. Elnor attacks with force and speed, driving him back and demanding he prove his worth with his own hands, and Rest feels the weight and pace of each blow, struggling to resist and show his resolve. Barely keeping up as every strike forces him to hold his guard, knowing she's holding back yet aware that one slip will send him down, so he grits his teeth and keeps resisting. Refusing to give in and trying to learn from every exchange, a posture and spirit that surprise Elna and keep the duel fiercely alive until, exhausted, his legs fail and she calls the fight over, panting and worn. He asks how he did and she tells him he's totally inexperienced, weak physically and clumsy with technique, but then her eyes sharpen and she asks why he wants power so badly. Whether he seeks to surpass his brothers or master the sword. He answers firmly that his true wish is to defy his own destiny, and that honesty stuns her into silence before she decides to give him a chance. After she finishes with the brothers, she'll spare him 30 minutes of fencing on the strict condition she won't tolerate laziness, and elated he thanks her like a man reborn as she hands him a wooden sword. Orders him to learn the proper grip, sets the next lesson a month away, and tells him to train until then. 2 months pass and today is his third session with Elna. He advances determinedly with his wooden sword against her fast. Precise strikes, progress obvious, and the training brutal. He attacks but she easily disarms him, frowns and presses what's wrong, and sweating he stays focused, refusing to quit, while she calls out that his movements are becoming repetitive, smiles and announces a thrust. And at the snap of her blade, he surprises her with a lightning reaction, intercepting and countering with a precise move that earns her a rare nod of respect. Though she notes he tried a feint and calls that mistake, he admits trickery won't fool someone like her, and instead plans to use his tame ability to flip the fight. Because thanks to intense sessions, he's actually managed to learn one of the essential sword and sorcery techniques, and now aims to break his limits with a decisive blow. He unleashes a special maneuver that boosts his blade's speed and power, the classic swordsman's flash he somehow mastered in 2 months, and Elna watches stunned as the one flash strike screams through with terrifying power. Leaving him frustrated, he still has miles to go while she, surprised, admits his progress is astounding. In 2 months, he's matched the level his brothers reached in 6, and the flash move normally takes a year even for veterans. So for a non-combatant to pull it off now proves extraordinary effort, raw talent and iron will, making her wonder if she underestimated him, and when Rest, heart pounding, asks to go again, she watches his confident posture and realizes she might be polishing a rare gem with the potential to become a true warrior. Rest Albion's heart slammed, reborn as the villainous noble from Symphony of Sword and Magic. He knew his canon fate was to die mid-story, so he vowed to weaponize every scrap of game knowledge to become the strongest and escape that tragic end. Elna's teachings over 3.5 months had sharpened him steadily, and his plan to avoid the protagonist and anyone who could turn hostile had worked, until his father announced Princess Charlotte, the Kingdom of Finale's second princess and one of the game's main heroines, would be staying at their house, and the name hit him like a death knell. Charlotte von Finale was the perfect princess, honest, kind to everyone, endlessly curious, able to befriend anyone, driven by an iron sense of justice, constantly training to protect her people and blessed with a rare talent, and because she was so just she never ignored villains. In the game she stopped his rampage, joined the hero to confront him, and midway through that clash he was slain by a demon warrior, so her presence here was a walking death flag. They shouldn't even be connected now, yet Charlotte had heard rumors about a prodigy swordsman from House Albion, and demanded to meet him in person, dangerously rewriting the plot. And when he realized there was an unexpected link between Elna and Charlotte that never existed in the original, the lively chatter at the table confirmed the princess's interest in the talented swordsman Elna trains. Rest finally figures it out. The game's script bent because he chose to train with Elna. That choice lured Princess Charlotte's attention and rerouted the whole story, and convinced the only swordsman of her generation she could mean must be him. So while his brothers cling to vain hopes, he knows Elna wasn't praising them. 2 weeks later, on Charlotte's visit day, Rest steels himself. This meeting could shape his future. He's terrified a chance encounter will trigger a deadly flag, but can't skip without permission. So he skulks away as his brothers mock that the princess wouldn't be interested in someone like him and that she's here for them. And Rest spits a sarcastic thanks for their help, keeping him from the reception, and decides to train instead, reasoning he must defeat monsters and make them subordinates to master his taming ability. Already plotting with only a training sword in hand, and eyeing the arced forest inside Albion territory as perfect practice, but remembering entry is forbidden until Royal Academy enrollment, and shelving the plan for now. As he walks off, the reception unfolds. Charlotte arrives radiant and courteous, wowing everyone. Gad Albion praises her visit and notes a new ability she's gained. Rest's brothers are enchanted by the Princess of the Sacred Sword and can't hide their admiration, and when Charlotte politely asks to see their swordsmanship, the pride-swollen twins leap at the chance. Gad orders them to the training field, and Rest watches every move, knowing someone with her power could twist the plot further. On the field, the twins unleash fast, synchronized attacks that fail to impress Charlotte. She watches coolly, judges that despite 6 months of practice, their level isn't remarkable. And when one brother suggests real combat to win her favor, they volunteer to go to Arced Forest to fight monsters, claiming they know it though it's their first time, and arguing their father's push to win the princess excuses it. And after a glance with her attendant, Charlotte accepts and vows to count on them as they enthusiastically promise to protect her. Deep in Arced Forest, Charlotte scans the gloom with a flicker of concern, while everyone marches in silence and tension tightens. She notes the woods are darker than expected and casually asks why another Albion around her age isn't here. The twins, caught off guard, explain Rest stayed home thinking he'd fail their father's expectations, and point out he has the tame ability so wouldn't catch a swordsman's eye, which makes Charlotte thoughtful and piques her attendant's notice. Then the group runs into a pack of rank E gray wolves. They strike together to wipe them out. The wolves surge and one youth slips, but they beat them back and catch their breath until a girl scoffs the foes were unimpressive, and the maid warns the wind changed and urges a swift retreat with the princess. As they prep to leave, a show-off insists on pressing deeper to prove himself, but a thunderous roar cuts him off and a massive gale wolf, a C-ranked terror, storms out, sending everyone reeling as it slams into the group, tossing one aside, and while the maid bravely holds it back and orders the men to carry the princess to safety, they hesitate, then flee with her as the scene turns desperate. Escape is blocked by an even larger wolf that bars their path. The girl cries orders to ready a counterattack. The beast charges and the men panic. One sword blow glances off uselessly, so when a comrade falls, a young woman steels herself, draws her blade and charges the leviathan, screaming, trusting Estelle will arrive. But the wolf rips forward with brutal speed. She fights with every ounce of strength, only to be surprised by its wind magic, and though disarmed, she refuses to break. She claws herself up and starts casting holy magic, determined to keep the fight alive. Her incantation collapses as she realizes she can't finish in time. A wolf lunges at breakneck speed, leaving her exposed and certain this is the end. Then, at the last heartbeat, a mysterious young man surges between them and takes the strike. She gapes as he shields her. The wolf snarls at the new threat, and in stunned awe she demands who he is. He meets her with cold calm and says he's just a simple passerby, which only thickens the mystery amid the standoff. Moments before the clash, he'd spotted Charlotte, her guard Estelle, and Edward's group walking together, trailed them silently, and was shocked to find them headed straight for the deadly arced forest. A young man watches the group step into the forbidden forest, and convinced the twins are trying to impress Charlotte, fears that while the area's monsters are mostly low-level, a stronger beast could cost her life. So he tells them to keep her safe. His hunch proves true when he arrives just in time to shield Charlotte from a wolf's savage lunge, and afterward he exhales in relief. Realizing it could have turned into a tragedy for his family if he hadn't acted, Charlotte demands to know who saved her. Nervous to hide his true identity, he claims to be a simple commoner. She's skeptical that someone with that skill is ordinary, but he says they'll talk later, and for now must focus on the fight as he assesses the threat. Gale Wolf, a ranked sea monster that wields wind magic, would be a brutal opponent with at most a 40% chance of victory. He relies on his game knowledge and steels himself, then darts in to strike the Gale Wolf as the beast whips up a razor wind. Tension crackles while both brace for the decisive clash. He reads and dissects each move mid-motion as the Gale Wolf unleashes unpredictable assaults that shut down melee and ranged angles with brutal balance. But he narrows his focus, hunts a single opening, snaps a pinpoint strike into the beast, and confident, proves he's memorized every one of its attack patterns from the game. The monster, taken off guard, reels from the blow and begins to weaken, and Charlotte watches, impressed, as the young man rains strike after strike on the Gale Wolf. His physique and technique don't outmatch hers, yet he pins the beast back, and she can't stop wondering who he really is. After the events, Charlotte trains under Lady Elna, who praises her and admits she feared Charlotte might go soft after obtaining the Princess of the Sacred Sword, but watching her grind reassures her. Charlotte snarls she won't lose to anyone, even if others have better swords or stronger magic. And Elna explains rivals aren't only flashy ability holders. Some people without powers clawed their way up through raw talent and relentless effort. The lesson Charlotte recalls. Then Elna suddenly lights up about a boy from the Albion family the same age as Charlotte, saying he's fascinating and that meeting him could fire her up. And Charlotte, surprised Elna ever sounded so excited, realizes the boy must be Lest Albion, the young man who saved her, finally understanding he's the one Elna praised. Cursed with the useless tame ability, yet a genius with terrifying strength. Impressed, she links him to Elna's words just as the fight rages on. The wounded Gale Wolf still stands before Lest, drained of mana but stubborn, and Lest decides to strike. Yet the wolf lunges, Charlotte is hit and collapses, alarm rippling through everyone, and Lest, eyes locked on her, explodes into action. He charges with a shout, lands a direct, precise blow to shield her, then gathers every ounce of strength and unleashes a final, devastating strike that flashes bright, engulfs the beast in an energy blast, and fells it. Its body scarred by the hit, Lest watches the result with cold control, pants and declares victory. Charlotte breathes a stunned relief and congratulates him. He smiles but warns it's too early to celebrate because tougher trials may lie ahead, and with the Gale Wolf defeated at his feet, he keeps a hard, determined gaze. Lest realizes bearing the supposedly useless tame ability is just the opening bell. The real fight is still ahead. After the victory, Charlotte rushes over to thank him for saving her, and when he asks if she's all right, she calmly calls him Sir Lest, which stuns him into silence, so he asks how she knows his name as other group members gather in the background. Charlotte says she recognized his wooden sword, the same model Lady Elna gave her, reveals she's the second princess of the Kingdom of Finale and that they share the same sword master, then beams sincere gratitude and admiration for him, thanking him for protecting her. Lest keeps his composure and says it was only natural while his mind flickers to the possible consequences for his family, and Charlotte smiles brightly, thanks him again, and respectfully calls him Sir Lest, leaving him speechless and visibly shaken. He asks her to tend the other's wounds while he checks the Gale Wolf. She agrees, and he slips into the bushes to find the beast still alive but badly injured and weakened, so he studies it silently and thinks everything now hinges on the creature's will to serve him. A message blinks that the wolf is interested in him, recognizing the warrior who defeated it and offering a chance to subjugate it, and excited Lest, convinced he can tame it, grins, calls the creature by name, strides forward and firmly touches it, asking it to become the first monster he has ever subjugated. The wounded beast emits a low, accepting growl and bows to its new master. The subjugation completes. A notice grants him part of the tamed monster's power and awards him wind magic. He also gains the dimensional resonance skill for his first successful taming, and raw magical power surges through his body as he celebrates. A fire ignites in Lest as he realizes his taming power doesn't just enslave monsters. It pulls their strength into him and lets him wield their skills. Every tamed beast bulks up his body, and the Gale Wolf's wind magic becomes his to command. Haunted by how the thirst for power once cost him everything, he's sworn to train and earn his path, and with each monster he conquers, he grows fiercer. Convinced this power can make him the world's strongest, Lest dubs the Gale Wolf Geralt, who answers with an eager growl, orders him to hide while he tests his dimensional residence ability. Tears open a portal to a vast alternate space and starts prepping Geralt to slip inside when shouts of "My lady" yank him back. Stella bolts to Charlotte, relieved she's unharmed as Charlotte says a second Gale Wolf attacked but was driven off, prompting Estella to ask if Charlotte fought or if someone protected her and the crowd to gape. And when Charlotte points at Lest, introduces him as an Albion and declares he saved her, Estella blurts, "Who is he?" Then marvels he beat the Gale Wolf faster than she could have. Charlotte insists she saw it all and, smiling, teases Lest, who she thought only had the tame ability, to confirm it in front of everyone. Lest replies calmly that it was a tough fight, but he repelled the beast, then reassures her, "Miss Estella." She's stunned and promises a proper thank you later, then remembers she never even introduced herself, and puzzled how he knew her name, leaves Lest blushing. Charlotte teases that he must have overheard Estella earlier, which smooths things over, and a relieved Lest vows to be more careful around game characters, as Estella thanks him again for saving Charlotte. They leave the forest with Charlotte insisting she can walk, return to the mansion to worried servants, and Lest hauls an injured youth inside while demanding urgent care for Charlotte and her brother. The butler scrambles for potions, towels, and water, and Lest insists his brother be tended first. Lest's father storms in, furious, demanding explanations and accusing Lest of being the only one unhurt, so Lest stammers a defense and the room tightens until Charlotte cuts through the tension, declaring Lest made no mistake, he saved her life. Stella calls for a formal account, explains Edward and Sidward led them into Arst Forest where two-rank Seagale wolves attacked, and when she confronts the Marquis about letting kids into such danger, he protests he never authorized it yet shuffles when Estella says responsibility falls on the head of the house. Charlotte, diplomatic, refuses to blame the whole house and admits they trusted the brothers too much, then crowns Lest the lone victor over a Gale wolf and asks the Marquis to close the matter in Lest's honor, leaving him speechless. Charlotte asks to be taken to rest, but tells Lest she'd like to see him again later. He's stunned, but agrees, while the Marquis escorts the girls out muttering that his useless son couldn't possibly have done that. Lest watches his father's disbelief burn him, and that night the party stays at the mansion but Lest, restless and sleepless, sneaks out to train and is surprised to find Charlotte on the terrace watching the sky. Smiling as she calls it a coincidence and asks to talk a little, and he readily agrees. Charlotte beams her thanks, claiming she might have died without him. Lest shrugs, relieved to see her safe, her smile calling him kind as she praises the courage that felled the Gale wolf, though he credits her for weakening it first. She admits how much she still must learn, steels herself to improve, then grows serious about Lest, catching him off guard and making his heart race until she shocks him by asking him to be her sword friend, a rival and partner to train and grow together, and when he misreads it as a confession she clarifies. He breathes out relief, understands her goal to reach Lady Elna is still far off, sees in Lest a same-aged peer already a step ahead, and so begs him to train by her side. Lest hesitates at being dragged into main character affairs, but crumbles at her insistence and accepts. She squeals Sir Lest in celebration and begs him to call her Charo. He balks at the status gap, but yields to her stubborn charm and uses the nickname. They trade smiles under the stars. She still slips in Sir Lest and leaves next morning with a bright farewell as Lest, and the Marquis promise her return, only for the Marquis to erupt in fury that Lest, of all people, saved the princess. Railing at the twins for nearly ruining the Albion name, dismissing Lest as useless while his wife tries to patch things by saying the twins only wanted to impress Charlotte. Twins angrily counter that Lest staged his heroism and that they incapacitated the Gale wolf. The Marquis clings to their story despite Charlotte's eyewitness claim. Lest watches silently, thinks them fools remembering Edward's weak strikes, insists he alone defeated the beast, and is branded a fool by his father who orders him to know his place, so Lest challenges the insult and is slapped with a setup. Defeat Edward and Sid at once to prove his truth, a ploy to humiliate him, as both pretend fair combat. Lest notes fighting too should be impossible, but after mastering Geralt, he has shed his old limits, his expression hardening into cold confidence as he accepts. The crowd tightens around the looming clash until a composed woman strides in as official witness, summoned by word of an attack on her students, revealing she privately tutored a third pupil and so stands as a legitimate observer. Skeptical that a few secret lessons alone could explain his nerve and determined to see for herself, the young man admits a month ago he'd have lost. His master demands proof. He salutes respectfully. Draws the wooden sword she gave him, a token that brands him her direct disciple, braces to fight two armed foes with nothing but resolve, and finally reveals that his iron confidence comes from taming Geralt, a new power that has boosted his body and changed him. Granted mastery over wind magic and the power to tame creatures, the convicted youth burns to prove his strength but cloaks his true power with a secret smile as the master signals and the duel detonates. One brother charges ferociously, certain he can win alone, yet the youth stands stone calm, and with agile, razor-precise moves turns every assault into confusion as attacks fizzle against his immovable defense. Frustration spikes when the second brother crashes in with a brutal, mocking strike meant to crush a wooden sword beneath a steel blade, but the youth blocks without flinching. Then a strange smile flickers as he unveils his trump, the maffle technique from a training game where it was common, squeezing mana into the tiniest crevices to make wood unbreakable, a mastery his foes never passed simple training for. Bolstered by a pact with Geralt that swelled his mana pool, and by relentless practice in mana control and body reinforcement that floods his muscles with energy, he turns speed and impact against superior gear, outclassing them with pure technique until the brothers stagger back, and Lest, shifting from serene to savage, seizes control, rains precise, punishing blows that smash defenses. Nails one opponent hard and leaves the other reeling while the crowd and even his master gape at the impossible growth inside him. Yet Edward and Sid still clutch hidden weapons. The master broods on the danger of secret powers, and Lest, calm and determined, knows a knockout would be easy but won't prove his worth. Lest vows to prove he's the strongest and force them to yield, not with raw power alone but with absolute conviction. The brothers finally unveil their hidden powers and unleash synchronized techniques, the air snaps and a fierce counterattack erupts, and Lest feels the danger as they pour everything into the fight. Their customized skills and full strength make his speed and power no match in a head-on clash, so with options running out, he admits his current technique won't be enough, and pressed to the edge, activates the tool he swore not to use yet. Wind magic shrouds his blade in hypervibrating, cutting currents that turn his sword into a weapon of supreme cutting power, and with surgical precision, he unleashes his deadliest technique to swing the battle. With a single lightning arc, Lest surged at the brothers, and their combined defense shattered. The cut landed so impossibly fast and clean it felt like it struck before anyone could see it, plunging the field into stunned silence as their swords split and the shards tumbled from their hands. No flashy technique, just brutal precision. His wooden blade sheared steel like paper, and the crowd reeled while the brothers froze, gripped by fear and defeat, and Lest, steady despite his wounds, stared them down and dared them to keep fighting until the master ended the duel. Edward and Sid surrendered. The result became official, and Lest was declared the victor, sparking shock and indignation among some who refused to accept a loss to someone they'd long written off. Yet the authority demanded acceptance, and, grudging and furious, the Marquis acknowledged Lest's win. The brothers turned to their father in despair but were ignored, while Lest's master stepped forward to praise his dignity and strength, revealing she'd seen a faint weave of magic in the final strike, and with a knowing smile. Asked about the brief hesitation before the blow, Lest admitted he'd thought of alternatives, that he could have won without unleashing his ultimate move by redirecting their attacks, but full blocks risked chaos and might have made them wound each other, which he wouldn't allow, so he chose to destroy their weapons instead. Nothing escaped her watchful eyes, and Lest, humble, confessed he's far from her level, earning Elna's amused, proud approval as she ruffled his hair and sealed their bond with laughter. Later, secure in the Albion family, he returned to his dimensional room to summon Geralt. The towering ally barreled in with eager commotion as it tried to squeeze inside. Lest chuckled, promised to join it. Stepped outside exhausted, but smiling, hugged Geralt to thank the beast for its decisive role. Yet the victory felt like a starting gun. He discovered he'd hit the cap on how many creatures he could control, and now faced a bottleneck he must break to grow. So resting beside Geralt, he weighed the limits of his taming art, powerful but constrained by rules that demand he evolve, balancing stronger monsters with strengthening himself. Remembering the game's 5-creature cap that made him potent yet vulnerable if he lost allies. Lest swore he'd evolve alone to bury his past mistakes. Night training sharpened him, but only slaying monsters would forge real experience, and when he checked his growth, he realized Taming, Geralt had pushed his power to the brink of rank B, while his official rank still read C. Lest burns to face the monsters in Alsthorst, but knows the timing isn't right, already eyeing his next prey to tame, and vowing to make that creature his companion. Then he shocks everyone by toppling Edward and Sid despite being outnumbered, cutting through their attacks with advanced techniques and razor-precise mana control, sparing their lives but shattering their weapons. Hailed as the victor, he rises in Albion House's esteem, plots his next moves determined to grow stronger and face a new, mysterious beast hidden in Alsthorst. 3 months earlier at the Divine Oracle ceremony, Lest received the Tame ability, a gift the traditional, renowned Albion swordsmen call useless in battle, and the Patriarch branded it a shame. Struck Lest from the succession, and formally disqualified him as heir to assert his authority. The Patriarch stood by that rigid rejection, yet Lest exploded past expectations, slaying a Gale Wolf and even drawing the second princess's eye, and now the father simmers with frustration, fearing Lest's rise will expose his mistake. Consumed by pride and dread, he vows to destroy Lest's prestige and name at any cost, backing his eldest son, a swordsman in his own image, though Lest's favor with the princess ruins every neat plan. Unable to expel him outright, the Patriarch hatches a cold scheme. He can't strike Lest head-on, so he plots to shove him into danger, even mulling an irreversible injury and using the recent chaos in Alsthorst as the perfect trap. The next morning, Lest is stunned by a direct order to investigate Alsthorst, and though it smells like a setup, he can't deny it's the perfect chance to sharpen his skills. Lest's father spins a story about an emergency, Gale Wolves in shallow areas, and crowns the mission as proof of Lest's strength, but Lest smells a rat. Knowing the region, he sees the excuse for what it is when his father coldly reveals the real plan: shove him into Alst Forest where B-rank monsters and worse roam, wait for him to die, and blame his death on supposed arrogance to wash his hands. Yet Lest, sensing the trap, accepts anyway, turning the authorization into a chance to grow and vowing to use the snare as advantage. He prepares and rolls into Alst Forest's superficial lair, where the foes are weak but surprises still hide in the grass, summons Geralt from his dimensional residence, and steps into the first fight with confidence and kinship, knowing the Tame ability not only bends monsters to his will, but bonds and strengthens both tamer and beast as they charge. In battle, he proves that tame power scales with his own growth, keeps a wooden sword to subdue without killing, and when he needs extra cutting force, he unleashes Mat Kazutachi. Then vegetation explodes open, and a D-rank firebird darts beyond his wooden blade, so he stays calm, treats it as wind magic practice, fires a precise wind shot that strikes the bird mid-flight and triggers a strange reaction. Energy coils around the enemy, a pleasant lightness floods Lest, and he levels up for the first time. He realizes why he got no XP from taming Geralt before. He never defeated him, but now, finishing foes properly and even gaining XP from monsters Geralt defeats, his progress rockets as his wind magic sharpens, and within a week he and Geralt tear through ever stronger beasts until the superficial layer no longer feeds his growth. Tempted to push deeper without permission, he instead hears from a superior that starting tomorrow he'll be sent into the deeper zones. Surprised, he credits his rapid rise for the promotion, accepts the mission, and the next morning he and his companion get the green light to explore the intermediate layers where C to G rank monsters lurk. Confident they won't be a real challenge, he grinds through fights, hits B rank himself before he notices, and after another week a massive cyclops suddenly blocks their path. Exhilarated, he signals the attack, unleashes a powerful wind blast that clips the cyclops, his wolf partner lunges and bites, and their coordinated strike tears open a window of vulnerability that Lest ruthlessly exploits. Seizing the opening, the young man slammed a wind spell into the Cyclops' guard, shattering its defense and leaving the giant bleeding and reeling. And when the Cyclops, desperate, gathered a deadly ray in its eye, he recognized the attack, confident in his timing and determined to test his power against such a foe. So instead of dodging, he planted his feet and hurled a new gale to meet the beam head-on. The Cyclops fired, the attacks collided in a thunderous explosion that rocked the ground, while his wolf lunged into the fray to join the assault. Both he and the beast fought the backlash as the Cyclops screamed under the pressure. The combined assault cracked the monster's defenses. He seized the gap with a direct strike while the wolf roared and prepared a finishing attack. Then the wolf tore in fiercely and landed the decisive blow that sent the wounded Cyclops crashing down. Relief washed over him as he praised the wolf. Then a new energy surged through him. A confirmation floated before his eyes, and he leveled up into a new power tier, which increased his monster taming capacity so he could add one more ally. Excited, he already pictured the creature he wants to tame in the depths of Arced Forest, and despite having no permission to enter, wondered if he could wait, so he told his wolf to rest because tomorrow they'd face their toughest opponent yet, his next target, a legendary dragon of the country. The next day, without official permission, Lest plunged alone into the forest's depths. Alongside Gorl, he tore through the shallow and middle layers, cutting down B-rank monsters as they stormed forward. At last they plunged into the heart of Ulster Forest and reached the very spot destiny had marked for them. Finally, Lest and Gorl burst through the trees and stood at their destination, deep in the forest. They bristled, nerves honed to razor-edged anticipation. It mattered far less the moment a formidable presence waited for them. The Black Dragon's arrival slammed down a brutal, deadly trial that waited for him inside. The Black Dragon looms over the ruins, its power searing through every cracked stone. The aura screamed terror, but he let out a sharp laugh. This was only a juvenile, nowhere near its true power. A suffocating pressure slammed the air, leaving no doubt this was no ordinary foe. Les squared off against the juvenile Black Dragon, heart hammering, knowing this hatchling was only a fraction of its true might. Once fully grown, it would surpass 100 meters and unleash devastating power. The Black Dragon's power smashed the protagonist's party, pushing the kingdom to the brink of annihilation. Shattering the demon lord's hold with a thunderous roar, the dragon funneled its last strength into mending the ruined towns and healing the people it had devastated. As its last breath escaped, the Black Dragon ripped open its past, revealing it was descended from the divine dragon that once stood as the kingdom's guardian deity. It poured every ounce of its power into destruction, spoke its final words, and breathed its last. Players shrugged it off as a forced defeat, the scene slammed into their memories. The Black Dragon tore through the original story just once, but when Les played the game it burned itself into his memory, now reincarnated. He vowed to defy fate. His very first thought was to unleash his tame skill and bind this powerful dragon to his side. Les didn't just hunger for the Black Dragon's power, he vowed to seize it and spare the beast from the same tragic fate it suffered in the original tale. After 4 brutal months in this world, he finally stood before the chance he'd been dying for. To tame the mighty dragon, he had to defeat it in savage battle first. Dragons in this world were titans of magic, siphoning mana and transmuting it into roaring fire, vengeful storms, shimmering illusions, and other impossible wonders. Even as hatchlings, they gulped magic and exploded in growth. In the game, a demon lord's officer had amped the Black Dragon to Super S rank, but right now it only sat at Upper B, so the odds of facing it had plummeted. Standing beside Goral, they dared to believe they finally had a real shot at taking down the black dragon. Determination ignited in his eyes as he planted his feet to face the mighty beast, ready to seize the clash and turn it into his advantage. The black dragon unleashed a suffocating, crushing pressure that slammed across the battlefield and stole every breath. But Les held fast, unyielding resolve like forged steel. He summoned Geralt, and together they surged forward, crashing into the mighty beast head-on. Les burst into action with Goral, determined to wrench the black dragon from the sky, and together they unleashed a thunderous surge of power to slam the beast down onto solid ground. Les ripped the air apart and unleashed a cyclone blast that multiplied into a maelstrom of whirling destruction. He unleashed a titanic gale straight at the black dragon. A tidal wave of destruction homed in to shred its shields and send the mighty beast crashing from the sky. The black dragon unleashed an earth-shattering counterstrike. With a single wingbeat, it scattered Lest's devastating strike, leaving him stunned as the brutal gulf in their strength slammed into him. Even against this juvenile dragon, the black dragon unleashed an overwhelming display of power. Lest didn't flinch, he'd foreseen that force, and with Geralt at his side, braced to charge headlong into the clash. The black dragon drew a deep breath and unleashed a cataclysmic blast, a condensed mass of pure mana forged to annihilate. We plunge headlong into the terrifying blast, eyes locked on its overwhelming danger, every fiber coiled to counter it. The black dragon's breath attack roared forth, and the target's dodge came too slow, a heartbeat late to escape its destructive force. He flashed a confident grin and seared one truth into his mind: the fiercest strike is worthless if it never connects. They ripped wind magic from the air, lifted into the sky, and carved through the midair with razor-sharp precision. With enhancements sharpening his body and mana roaring in his veins, he revealed he'd trained for an aerial duel from day one, and hurled himself to meet the black dragon head-on. His blade erupted and multiplied into a storm of steel, dulling the crushing strikes from above, and at the same time he ripped open a gravity well, pinning the black dragon beneath crushing force as their battle escalated. Lest's devastating strike slammed into the black dragon, sending it crashing to the ground. Its colossal toughness swallowed the attack, leaving it barely scratched. Seeing the blow barely faze him, Les snapped for Geralt to unleash a follow-up strike, and Geralt rocketed forward, lunging with savage force at the black dragon. They slammed into it with everything they had, a synchronized follow-up assault. Even Geralt's claws slammed into the black dragon's impenetrable scales and skidded off without leaving a scratch. It ripped the veil off how brutally punishing the battle had been. Lest and Goral planted their feet shoulder to shoulder on the same ground, bracing as the dragon's overwhelming strength slammed into them and stripped away any doubt. The black dragon towered over the battlefield, its overwhelming aura bearing down like a vice on both Lest and Geralt. The fight's true scale slammed into view as the black dragon growled, its massive eye locked on Lest, yet he planted his feet and met the beast with iron determination, daring its overwhelming might head-on with unwavering resolve. Lest snarled that his earlier strikes were only the opening salvo. Shoulder to shoulder with Geralt, he steeled himself as their battle against the black dragon erupted. Ripped from the sky, the black dragon gave up on flying and smashed into the earth to charge Lest and Geralt head-on. In the battle's blistering heat, exhilaration exploded through Les. In the game, the black dragon had always been a demon's puppet. This battle ripped that illusion away, raw, untamed, and brutally real. He squared off against the black dragon, his heart hammering with wild exhilaration. The clash with that relentless foe set his spirit ablaze, and his hand instinctively tightened on the wooden sword like a vice, ready to deliver the decisive strike. He slammed into the black dragon head-on, adrenaline roaring through him as the savage clash thrilled every fiber of his being. The rush fed a hunger for more, but beneath the clash he glimpsed something beyond battle. His true purpose flared into view, not just a fight. They didn't come for blood, they came to tame the black dragon. He tore it free from its tragic destiny and forged its sorrow into a new path at his side. Fires of determination burned in their eyes as the boy and Geralt steeled themselves for the decisive clash, knowing only victory could change the black dragon's fate. The black dragon slammed into them with savage fury, but every strike ripped open wide gaps he and Geralt darted through, and the longer the fight dragged on, a strange, prickling unease crawled up his spine. It hit him like a punch. The fight wasn't a simple clash, it was a tangled trap. It was only a juvenile, but wearing the mantle of King of Magic, it should have annihilated us, yet the battle unfolded with baffling ease. The dragon lunged and rained its fury, every strike purposely held back instead of going for the kill. The battle unmasked a bizarre rhythm. The dragon hurled devastating, nearly inescapable attacks, yet each strike felt strangely reined in, its breath choked back like a beast on a leash. It slammed into me. The creature was holding back, every strike baited and precise, part of a cold, deeper strategy. The black dragon erupted, tearing the air apart as it poured every ounce of its cataclysmic power into the world. He funneled raw energy into his maw, coiling it into a devastating breath that would incinerate everything. A brutal surge blasted out, proving it had thrown off its restraints. That instant exploded into a decisive turning point, flipping the tide of the battle. The black dragon blasted the battlefield with a devastating breath that swallowed everything in blinding light, and the warrior dug his heels in, jaw like steel, refusing to back down as the tension erupted into a heart-pounding peak. A cold truth slammed into him. Brute strength alone couldn't tame the black dragon. This creature wasn't a mere enemy. It demanded a true bond, something forged far beyond raw power. A cold truth slammed him. Brute force could never subdue the black dragon. To win and truly tame it, he'd have to call on something that dwarfed mere strength. The black dragon's aura slammed onto the field, crushing the air and stilling everyone. Then, instead of lunging, the beast faltered, hesitation crackling across its scales. Scorching heat detonated around him as titanic waves of magic flooded the air, and doubt stabbed through his thoughts. Had his prediction collapsed, was the black dragon's titanic power about to annihilate him? As the magic pressure ebbed away, realization slammed into him. He was unscathed. The black dragon loomed before him, blazing with raw power yet curbing its true fury. Relief surged through him, and certainty hardened in his bones. His suspicions snapped into certainty. The creature wasn't fighting to kill. A brutal truth slammed into him. The black dragon had never wanted to hurt them. Those bizarre, erratic strikes obliterated any doubt and proved him right. The breath attack, brutal and suffocating, only confirmed the pattern he'd predicted. It was the lone assault he could withstand. He survived, and his prediction rang true. It hit him like a punch to the gut. The black dragon's breath had been a bluff. It looked lethal but was hollow at the core, forged with pinpoint magical control. Only a being crowned the king of magic could pull off a feat like that. A single burning question punched through him. Why had the dragon gone to such great lengths? The truth slammed into him. The black dragon had been testing him. It respected his strength, his wisdom, and the way he recognized its pride. A message blazed across the screen. The dragon was now tameable. A blazing chance opened for him to forge a bond with the mighty creature that bore the legacy of its ancestors. The black dragon never sought to spill innocent blood. It longed to bind its power and spare the world needless destruction. He answered the beast's pride with respect, won its trust, and the black dragon accepted him, letting him tame it. The young warrior thrust his hand toward the black dragon and proclaimed his true purpose, to guard its pride from anyone who would dare tarnish it. Staring down that raw, undeniable sincerity, the mighty beast froze mid-roar, breath caught, as it locked eyes with the unbreakable resolve standing before it. The warrior lunged and planted his hand on the black dragon. He unleashed a thunderous roar, summoning it to fight at his side from that day on. The dragon accepted, sealing their bond as allies, and the instant it did, a colossal surge of power slammed into the warrior. He reeled, eyes wide, shouting as the strange force began rewriting his body. A chill realization hit him. Something far greater was beginning to awaken, and as the pact with the black dragon took hold, a thunderous surge of magic ripped through him. His strength exploded, his senses snapped razor-sharp, and his very being was honed to an impossible edge. This was the true meaning of taming the king of magic, a power unlike anything he'd ever known. The taming snapped shut as the black dragon poured a shard of its immense power into the young man, branding him with the dragon's blessing and igniting a raw new strength, the first thunderous step toward a shared, legendary destiny. The young man gained the trait Dragon's Blessing, a scorching power that imbued him with iron resistance to status effects and razor-sharp mastery over advanced magic control. He tamed it and bent the power of miniaturization to his will. The dragon's in-game feats slammed into him. It could reshape magical concepts themselves, yet many of its techniques remained stubbornly beyond his grasp. It hit him unlike in the game. This black dragon was still a fledgling, its powers raw and far from mastered. That meant every time it swelled, it flooded him with even greater power. A single thought ignited roaring excitement and ironclad determination in him. He declared the black dragon deserved a proper name. Just like Geralt, he scanned his options, weighed them, and zeroed in on a choice. They called it Noir. The word landed like a punch. They forged a name for the mighty creature that echoed its earth-shattering strength and towering presence. After christening the black dragon Noir, He locked eyes with Geralt, and for a heartbeat the world fell away. He owned it. Geralt's backing is how he landed that formidable ally. With both Noir and Geralt by his side, he forged a steel-strong bond of trust. He steeled himself to storm the challenges ahead, shoulder to shoulder with his newfound allies. Geralt snapped his miniaturization off and erupted back into his massive form, strength surging as he hurtled at the enemy, charging to fight beside his master in Noir. A memory slammed into him. The game had explained the Arced Forest. Dark magic pooled like a black storm, drawing hulking monsters and tearing open rifts that spewed demons. Demons weren't ordinary creatures. They were beings of pure soul and crackling magic from the demon realm, feared for titanic power and savage cruelty, and he felt his connection to them sink far deeper than he'd ever wanted. The truth slammed into everyone. Noir's hidden duty as king of magic was to purge evil energy and crush every attempt to summon demons. He'd spent years in the shadows, silently shielding the country's people. He accepted the mission with a fierce nod and urged Noir to keep guarding everyone. The protagonist forged a bond with Noir, begged the dragon to lend its power when the moment came, and Noir's rumbling assent sealed the pact. And the proclamation blazed out, a summoner and their beast. They stayed forever tethered by an unbreakable thread, their bond hardening into a fierce instinct, so they tasted each other's danger and barreled to each other's side to save one another. The bond teased a future where he could call familiars at will, a power that would sharpen as he bent more monsters to his will, just like in the game. After taming Noir, his stats exploded and a mighty dragon's blessing anointed him, proof the achievement was more than worthwhile. With the battle settled, he readied to return home alongside Geralt, satisfied with the gains. The protagonist couldn't resist and unleashed their new taming-granted miniaturization, shrinking Geralt down on the spot. The towering wolf, in an instant, shrank into a tiny, chibi version of itself, leaving both of them gaping at the jaw-dropping transformation. The protagonist put pocket-sized Geralt through its paces and discovered it was shockingly handy and impossibly cute. Cradling the shrunken wolf, it hit him that this little creature could make life in the mansion so much easier, though the sudden return to Geralt's. The beast's hulking bulk slammed into him, driving home the savage truth of what it really was. In an instant, a monstrous demon erupted into being and rocketed at our hero, with terrifying, blink-and-you'll-miss-it speed. He darted aside as the overwhelming threat, looming before him, slammed into his senses, and their blood ran cold as the enemy unveiled its true form, a hulking gargoyle. A B-rank, upper-tier creature, whose raw strength stood toe-to-toe with Noir. The gargoyle was a walking fortress and a nightmare to fight. It laughed off every strike, its uncanny resistance to physical attacks turning normal blows into wasted effort. Armed with a wooden sword, he met a nightmare matchup. Its blinding speed obliterated any chance to flee, dragging him into a brutal head-on clash. As battle raged, heat and fury tore through the air. Gorel launched himself, ripped out of his shrunken state, and exploded into a towering behemoth as his body flooded with fresh, brutal strength. He hurled himself straight at the gargoyle, every muscle primed to hit with full force, as Geralt ripped the air open with a devastating cyclone blast, winds spiraling straight into the beast. Dust swirled as an enemy leapt from above to strike, while Geralt stayed focused on his attack, and the boy instantly saw the truth. The gargoyle faltered against magic, not against steel. Geralt pinned the enemy back as he focused, channeling crackling arcane energy into a single, deadly spell. He braced himself. This fight would test every ounce of his endurance and force him to weave intermediate-level magic with surgical precision. Amid the battle's roar, his mana poured through him cleaner and stronger than ever, and it hit him, the dragon's blessing. He realized his command over magic had skyrocketed, and with power thrumming in his veins, he knew he could cast spells legs beyond intermediate level. The battle flipped. The boy locked eyes with Geralt, signaled, and they charged the gargoyle head-on. The beast barreled forward. Gorel baited its fury and carved a razor-thin opening for the boy. Then he channeled his power and slammed his miniaturization into motion. Braced for a lightning-fast, blindsiding counterattack, the boy tore a howling gale from the sky, hurling a devastating wind spell forged from the dragon's blessed, advanced magic. Unleashing arrow bursts, a high-level technique. He conjured a howling wind tempest, pinning the gargoyle in its fury and battering it with raw, crackling magic. The spell erupted, ripping the air into a colossal vortex. It tore through the battlefield, obliterating everything in its path. He and Geralt froze, jaws dropping, as a cataclysmic surge of power smashed through every expectation. As the forest cleared, Awe pinned him to the spot at the ruin his magic had carved. The once menacing gargoyle lay utterly obliterated by a single strike. The dragon's blessing ripped the sky with raw firepower, and a jolt hit him. Taming Noir had flooded his mana and poured immense strength into him, the true prize of a pact with the king of magic. Confidence roared through him. He finally saw how extraordinary his bond had become, Geralt standing proudly at his side. Relentless training sharpened his swordplay to a razor edge, and the colossal magic he absorbed by taming Gorl and Noir roared in his veins. He knew he was charging down the path to become the strongest. Unwavering determination and newfound strength thrummed in him as he swore, sure that step by step, he'd rise straight to the very top. The estate erupted as a royal entourage swept in for a dazzling visit. They burst in without warning, and the hosts threw open their doors to greet them with warm embraces. They exchanged courteous bows and whispered reassurances, then the lord stepped forward and solemnly presented his gift. Princess Charlotte, the second princess, swept into the Albion household to finally keep the earlier promise of sword training, kicking off her visit. Princess Charlotte swept into the Albion household for the promised sword training, brushing aside courtiers, vying for her favor to keep her appointment with Lest. He swept her into the grand training hall, the spot where their practice was about to ignite. Their bond shattered the barrier of ranks, forged shoulder to shoulder during training. Princess Charlotte's heart lurched as Elna's words about Lest's duel flooded back. At that very spot he'd crushed Lord Edward and his ally. She, awestruck, praised his skill, clueless he'd fought under rigged conditions. Lest sealed his lips and buried the truth in silence. Princess Charlotte roared her determination. After 2 relentless weeks of training, she was coming for Lest. Refuse to lose, steal your confidence, leap into the challenge, and strike the moment the maid signals. Their duel was about to ignite. Charlotte surged forward and unleashed a relentless attack, determination blazing in her eyes. She struck like lightning, swift and razor-sharp. Lest parried her blow with effortless precision, instantly recognizing the brutal force behind her sharpened swordsmanship. During the duel, Lest's jaw dropped. In just 2 weeks, Charlotte rocketed past Edward. Where she'd once matched him, she now left him eating dust compared to the others, her growth blistering. It slammed into him. Her meteoric rise was undeniable proof of the main heroine's true talent. After a blistering exchange, the duel was halted. Charlotte crumpled, every ounce of strength drained. She couldn't hide her shock as the gap between her and Lest yawned wider. Despite all her brutal training, his strength had surged at a terrifying speed, far beyond anything she'd expected. Charlotte didn't crumble. She practically begged to be taught the exact training that had made Lest so strong. Her blazing resolve knocked him off balance, and he froze. He locked his lips. He couldn't let the truth about the taming or the forest investigation slip. Lest clawed for an explanation he could give without laying the truth bare, when a training drill from the game slammed into his memory. He resolved to frame it as midnight training. Charlotte, hungry to get better, urged him to crank the training to its limits so she could catch up fast. At midnight, Charlotte threw herself into brutal training, weight work, blistering sprints, polishing her manners, and praying while lugging sandbags, exhausting drills designed to steadily raise her abilities, and she drove herself with iron determination to stick to it. Charlotte pummeled the sandbags, every savage blow sharpening her focus and burning through the pain. Estella marveled at Lest's relentless daily sword drills, admiration burning bright in her eyes. She snapped that refereeing was part of her duty as Charlotte's attendant, then told him to drop the formalities and speak to her more casually. Burning to erase the distance between them, Lest vowed, "I'll call you Estelle." He squirmed, painfully awkward beside her, because she was older. Estelle gave a heartfelt thank you, warmth in her voice, and a relieved smile spreading across her face. Training had Charlotte fired up, crackling with unstoppable energy. She wrapped up training way ahead of schedule and, eyes blazing, lunged forward to ask which task she'd tackle next. He eyed the spare hours, pictured a tea party, then killed the idea. He wouldn't risk unexpected guests crashing it. Instead, he grinned and urged them to plunge into the castle town together. Charlotte's eyes blazed at the thought of the castle town. She jumped at the chance and cried, "Let's go," with that. Destination decided, the trio surged out and plunged into the lively streets of the castle town. As danger closed in, Estelle shouted, "I'll shield the princess, someone else take the monsters." Charlotte demanded to fight at their side, certain that against the enemy's crushing numbers, only the 3 of them together stood a chance. They split up. Lest slid in beside Charlotte to shield her in the fight, while Estelle anchored the opposite side to back them up. Determination roared through him. Lest and Charlotte hurled themselves into the fray, shoulder to shoulder. He felled the attackers with steady, deliberate strikes, and the townspeople, relieved by his arrival, stood stunned and impressed. Their side cleared, he and Charlotte sprinted back to Estelle and plunged into the fight together. A Fang Tiger exploded from the shadows and blindsided Charlotte, a monster on par with a mid-class werewolf, and Les sprang into action to shield her before the beast could strike. Another Fang Tiger burst from the shadows and pounced, its strike locking in with the others with surgical, split-second timing. Les snapped into action. He slammed a devastating blow that hurled the beast back and ripped open the path, while Les stood poised to unleash wind magic, yet kept his true might sealed, guarding his secret power. Before he could act, Charlotte lunged forward, channeled her magic into a searing blast, and left him stunned. Charlotte loosed a blazing holy arrow that slammed into the Fang Tiger head-on, smashing its charge and stopping it cold beneath her overwhelming magic. Les' jaw dropped as Charlotte tore through holy magic. In just 2 weeks, her control shot past every expectation, raw talent blazing, and she charged the Fang Tiger head-on. She unleashed a decisive, holy strike that tore straight through the beast. Her power exploded, each blow driven by an unstoppable, battle-forged determination. Charlotte tore the Fang Tiger down, and her companions exploded into cheers, relief washing over them. They checked each other with quick, grateful nods, relief roaring through them as the princess's thunderous display of strength left them breathless. The town erupted in thunderous cheers for Lest's victory, crowning him their savior as he slipped unseen into the swelling crowd. The cloaked figure melted into the shadows, suspicion blazing in his eyes as he struggled to accept that someone known only for the tamer skill could suddenly erupt with that raw, terrifying strength. Doubt clawed at him had he been concealing his true power all along. A cold smirk split the cloaked figure's face. Before leaving the scene, he vowed to probe Lest's unusual strength, sensing hidden intentions and trouble brewing. The mark flinched, replaying how he'd sent Lest into the arced forest's deadly middle layers, expecting him to fail or be injured. Les kept showing up every day unscathed and grinning, igniting whispers about how someone with only a supposed. Who would have guessed a so-called useless taming skill could unleash feats like that? The Marquis staggered, stunned when those last words landed. The princess vanquished the monster that had descended on the town, and a roar of relieved cheers swept through the streets as everyone realized they were safe. Dread coiled in his gut as Lest's reputation exploded. He feared any slip would send suspicion crashing down on him. Clock ticking and fame slipping from its grasp, the Marquis sprang into action. He dispatched Lest into the forest's shadowed heart. This place devoured legends, so lethal even a sword saint could fall there, and everyone prayed it would finally put an end to him. Rage boiled in the Marquis over Lest's survival. He vowed this time the boy would not escape death's grip. Still, doubt coiled in his gut. He hatched a darker scheme. He hired an assassin to slash the death toll in the deep layers and erase every trace. The Marquis screamed in manic fury, hurling blame at Lest, then it choked off mid-syllable, th. His position teetered on the brink, but he swallowed the lie that his plan was flawless. But his plotting slammed to a halt when an unexpected voice agreed with him, jolting the Marquis and exposing someone in the room. A mysterious cloaked woman strode up to the Marquis, jabbed a finger into his scheme to expose its flaw, and stared, stunned he hadn't even felt her coming. He snapped, demanding to know who she was, and she just smiled, unshaken, then offered a sharper way to pull off his scheme. The cloaked woman glided up to the Marquis, her presence crashing into his senses as his mind fogged and focus slipped under her tightening grip. Resistance died under her grip. He folded in, inching into agreement and repeating her words like a puppet, never realizing he was being manipulated. Having commandeered the Marquis, the cloaked woman proclaimed everything ready and dropped a tantalizing hint of a hidden secret. Bound to Lest Albion, she swore she'd be the one to drag its secrets into the light, all while keeping the Marquis cowed and obeying her every whim. The next day, Charlotte and her companions bolted, abandoning their visit the moment the monster struck. She bolted early, fearing the assault had singled her out. Charlotte and her crew resolved to bolt home through the church-run teleportation magic circles, the major city network that catapults travelers across vast distances in an instant. They steel themselves to teleport from the church in Albion's castle town, a rite so draining even royalty rarely use it, a stark sign of how grave they view the situation. Les locked eyes on the teleportation circles, instantly equating them with the fast travel systems he often used in games, the shortcuts that only unlocked deep into the story. Before departing, Les grabs Charlotte's hands, locks eyes with her, and vows she's grown stronger than she realizes. She couldn't deny it. She and her companion had sharpened their swordplay and sorcery to a razor's edge. Charlotte beams and vows. She mastered the new training method and surged into brutal new strength. Then moments later, she slipped away. Lest's father summons him. He feels it in his bones. Something important is coming. Lest's father commands him to plunge alone into the darkest depths of arced forest. The place is whispered to be lethal. When he realizes it, the truth crashes in. His father seethes with fierce hatred for him. Gad slips on a mask of concern, declares Lest won't go alone, and posts a guard at his side. He let his guard fall, watching his suspicion of his father's true motives melt away. She answered to the name Lav. A B-rank adventurer storms forward, plants her feet, slams a hand to her chest, and declares, I'm the guard, who will brave the dangerous forest alongside Lest. Handpicked by Marquis Albion to guard Lest, Love zeroes in on the flicker of unease in his eyes. He shrugs it off in a heartbeat, insisting nothing's wrong. Lest's father barked the order, accept the guard, it's the only thing that will keep you alive. Lest obeyed instantly. Doubt gnawing at him, he finally gave in and let Love escort him. Lest names Lav his guard. Together they plunged toward the forest's shadowed depths.